Okay, so this time we're doing reflection. So we know that if we have our axes here, this is where the x's are positive, this is where the y's are positive, of course, etc. If we are reflecting in the x-axis, we're reflecting in the x-axis, then all these numbers over here, all these x values, right, are going, which are all positive y's, all the positive y values are going to come down here because they're reflected, it's a mirror image, and all the y's are now going to be negative y's. And if we're reflecting in the y-axis, and I'll create another axis over here, y-axis, there's my x, so there's reflecting in this line, my x, all my positive x's, because on this side all the x's are positive, they're going to turn into all negative x's. So when we do our reflection, we see that we also write the reflection of the x onto the y part and the reflection of the y onto the x part, because that's what's happening when we're reflecting in those axes. It goes on the opposite one. Okay, any question? Oh, I can do the graphs over here. Any questions so far?
So if we were to just like visually do that, if we were to draw a graph and then flip the page around, would that be the same?
If you do it correctly, yes.
Okay.
Okay, if you do it correctly, yes, because all you're doing is swapping it to the other side, yes, but it's not going to be that easy because they're not going to give you a graph, they're going to give you a function and you'll need to do the transformations on that function. Okay, in this case, okay, reflection transformation only. Okay, so here,
yeah, I was just thinking it was the thing like inflections.
Yeah, well, as you just said there, you know, here is a graph. Okay, and this, the one in red is your graph. Oh, sorry, the line in the dotted blue is your graph, and we're reflecting it in the line y of the x-axis, and you can see that here and here they're both going to be at the same point. You can see that, and you just sort of got to guess. This is like a little parabola, so we've got a little parabola down here. This is sort of a straight line going out, so we've got a straight line going out. This one's a line going straight up here, we've got the line straight up there. So that's how we drew them, and even in the y-axis, we reflected in the y-axis. So you sort of got to put the line there and go, right, I've got this little bit coming down here. So I've got to do the same loop as I have a mirror image. Then I've got this little bit coming over here, it's just a parabola. So I've got to have the same loop coming on the y-axis. So if they ever get you to do any of this on a graph, yeah, it's easy, but it's not going to be like that. Okay, I'm going to clear this. And let's move on. Example 1. So this is the type of thing more likely that they will give you. Okay, well, we will give you. It says find the equation of the image when the graph of y equals the square root of x is reflected and the first part is in the x-axis. Now remember, if it's reflected in the x-axis, that means when we write our rules down, xy is going to go to x and negative y, because reflected in the x-axis means the y's change. And therefore, our image is this x dash and our y dash. So that's how we've got x dash equals x, and our y dash becomes negative y. We've always got to rearrange it because this function is written in terms of x and y. So we want to find x and y. So I've rearranged it down here. All I need to do is rearrange this one here because that's just x equals x dash, and the other one is y equals negative y dash. So we want, oh, it's already rearranged there for us. We want y and x and y. It was over here, sorry, but I have to rearrange it. Then we substitute it into the rule. So where the rule is y equals the square root of x, instead of y, we're going to write a negative y dash equals the square root, and instead of x, well, x is just x dash anyway, so that's fine. Remove the dashes, you don't need to write it in the final transformed equation. So the transform function is just y equals negative the square root of x, because when I do this, I put the negative on the other side, and that becomes negative there. Any questions on that one? Okay, if it's in the y-axis reflection, then we're going to put the negative on the x part. And again, this x dash equals a negative x here. The y dash just equals the y. Rearranging this one to make x the subject gives us negative x dash. Substituting into our y equals the square root of x gives us y dash equals the square root of negative x dash. Okay, remove the dashes, so we get y equals the square root of negative x. Any questions with that? I mean, the graphs are there just to show you what actually happens. That's about it. Okay, clear this. This is question 4D from your exercise 3C, and it says find the equation of the image when the graph of y equals x to the power of 4 is reflected in the x-axis. Okay, so again, if it's reflected in the x-axis, we put the negative on the y. So then we have x dash equals x. Let me erase that. X dash equals x, y dash equals negative y, so y equals negative y dash. That's the same, so therefore y equals 1 over x to the power of 4 is going to be negative y dash. This would be x dash to the power of 4. Get rid of the dashes and move this negative to the other side, so we get y equals negative 1 on x to the power of 4. That's how I got that one there. If it's reflected in the y-axis, then we put the negative on the x. And again, our x dash this time is going to be negative x. Our y dash is going to be our y. We're going to rearrange this one. So x equals negative x dash. Substitute them both into the rule, which is this. So we get y dash equals 1 divided by negative x dash all to the power of 4. Now, negative to the power of 4 is a positive. So you get 1 divided by x to the power of 4. I removed the dash there, that's how I get that one there. Any questions for 3C? Okay. So we can do two things now. We can stop the video and you guys can do some questions,